All right, the red light is on and we are recording. This is Mark back for another episode of the weekly sit. Excuse me. Oh man, I'm doing the wrong intro to the show, people. Excuse me. The veteran semi-professional. I'm doing the other episode we're doing here. My bad. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet today. So anyway, today is the veteran semi-professional, and we're doing an interview episode today. We're interviewing a veteran about life and career after the military, all in an effort to help you if you're trying to figure out what you want to do with yourself once you can put your hands back in your pockets, grow your beard out, and live life as a civilian. This is the show for you. So what are the options and how you might go about pursuing different career paths? So super pumped for today's guest because we're going to talk about a whole number of things. So Bob, if you could take a minute and just introduce yourself to everybody on the show, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, real quick. My name is Bob Pizzini. I retired from U.S. Navy Special Operations about 11 years ago. And I have had an incredible journey both in the military and since I've retired.
And what'd you do in the Navy world?
So I was in Navy Special Operations. My first 4 or 5 years or so of my enlistment, I was a Navy diver, U.S. Navy deep sea diver.
Okay.
You know, grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, and was just fascinated by diving the depths of the ocean, the oceans of the world. And then when I was a Navy diver, I discovered Navy EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, right? Navy bomb tech.
Right.
And the stuff that they did was super cool, and wound up spending the next 20 years as a Navy EOD technician.
Awesome. I was my second deployment to Syria. It was a mostly Green Beret base, and then there was my civil affairs team, and then one Navy EOD team, and so we were kind of both like the bastard redheaded stepchildren of the base, and formed a strong alliance. And then lots of places that we went to where there's also pretty high IED threats. So I ended up doing a lot of missions with those guys, and absolutely love them. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, so I was on a couple of ODAs throughout my career as well. Super cool.
Yeah. It was also, I think, maybe one of the coolest coins that I got. They had a surfboard for a coin, which, just great Navy team right there. All right. So Bob, can you talk talk a little bit about your personal transition from the Navy? I mean, you're in for a long time. Can you talk a bit about, the good, bad, and the ugly, maybe some of the bumps along the way that you might want to point out to someone, during that initial transition process?
You bet. So I was in for 26 years, and I remember early in my career, probably when I was in E3, E2, E3, E4, I forget, but somebody said, with tuition assistance and all the education assistance that the military offers, start working on it now. You don't want to be the 50-year-old Master Chief sitting in a college class with a bunch of 18-year-olds. Start working on it now, and at some point, you're going to get there. You don't need to get a degree today, tomorrow, or next month or next year, but at some point, you're going to get there. So, somehow that advice sunk in. And I just continued college education throughout my career, and eventually wound up with a graduate degree. Now I realize most people transitioning right now, enlisted, great enlisted soldiers and sailors who are at the top of their game, may not have achieved that, but you still have that available to you. And it's not a be all end all,
right?
But what it just teaches you, it just exercises your brain more than anything else, and it allows you to see opportunities that you might not otherwise see. It allows you to be knocking on 3 or 4 or 5 doors instead of just looking for the one door. So education is one thing. And then, but with that, when I transitioned, I actually went right into contracting like most special operators do. And a good friend of mine was starting a business, and he wanted me to really come on board and establish a presence on the East Coast, which I did. So for me, that transition was fairly low risk, high reward, if you will. All I had to do was perform with people that I knew very well. And I would say that those contracting opportunities, as long as you're, good at what you do technically, and then you have all the personal responsibility skills, you know how to show up on time, right place, right uniform, all
Right.
that will do well. That will do well in the private sector, more so than anything else, because the private sector, and I own a business now with 35 employees, and I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I chaired the chamber, and I interact with business people around the country, and finding reliable people with great moral and ethical character is a challenge right now across the U.S. And if we come out of anything after a career in the military, we come out of there with moral and ethical character. I'm saying that because I've lived it, I've experienced it, and I see it every single day.
Yeah, and I hear that time and time again from, especially from business owners. And I think they come on the show and they say, listen, like we kind of get told like, oh, you're a veteran, you've been given, you got discipline and teamwork and, show up on time and all these kinds of things. And so sometimes we can take that for granted. And, it gets like repeated on a record to us of like, these are the things that set you apart. Right. But they do set you apart. And I've had multiple business owners on the show who say, getting people like that to do some of those basic things that have just been kind of inculcated into us as veterans it's not as widespread as maybe we think it is. When we take those basic things that have been taught to us from day one in the military for granted, they absolutely apply.
Yeah.
So this friend,
Yeah, they do. And go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that more and more I hire personally in companies, they hire for character. The skill set they'll teach you, they're looking for somebody who's going to respond to a job description, a position description, if you will, that says, we'll do whatever the team needs me to do to accomplish the objective of the organization. If there was one line I would put in a position description, that would be it.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about this first business that you ventured into? This was this someone that you had served with, or was it someone you knew from like another aspect of life?
Yeah. So no, I served with this gentleman. He won't mind me saying his name. His name is Mark Sanders, Commander Mark Sanders, U.S. Navy EOD, retired. But him and I, we have known each other for well over 20 years throughout our careers. We have been on exercises and operations together. We have never actually been at the same command at the same time. But this is somebody who I developed a lot of respect for throughout my career. I have seen him brief a room full of E6 and below on a mission, and they would walk out of that briefing pumped and motivated. Yeah. And he would use the same 5 slides, and he would brief admirals and generals.
That's amazing.
And he would change his. It is. Yeah. It is. He moved his presentation from the tactical level to the strategic level, but the admirals and generals walked out of there going, "We're gonna crush this thing." So Mark started a company called R3 Strategic Support Group, and the purpose of the organization was to provide this white collar support to the EOD forces of all services. We have a tendency to beg and borrow for our budgets and for our weapon systems and our tools to render safe explosives. That was the career that we lived. So his premise was, let's get out and create an organization that identifies requirements and then identifies resources to satisfy those requirements. And the end result is readiness. So it was a great premise. It was wonderful working with a great teammate. I had a lot of autonomy. We had a lot of success. That organization continues today to be highly successful. I worked for that organization for 5 years. That pretty much that whole 5 years, I was working on my own business plan called iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving. And so right at year 5 with R3, the business model was developed. I actually got all the I had my project put together, I had deals signed, and now it's time to start construction. So I left R3 and went full-time iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving.
Can you talk a little bit like what you were doing during those 5 years to kind of put all the pieces in place to get this thing set up so you knew when I step out of R3, iFLY is going to be ready to roll?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I took a course at the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce Small Business Center. You know as well as I do that in the military, we're masters at our craft, but reading profit and loss statements and cash flow statements and negotiating bank loans, there's just no school that I'm aware of where we teach that or discuss that. And that was what I had to learn quickly to put a business deal together. So I put myself, I could barely spell the word business at the time, although I had a graduate degree. So I put myself through this crash course with the Chamber of Commerce, and that was really the beginning. So that was, Small Business 101, how to write your own business plan. But the completion of that course was really the beginning of my journey, because I learned all the things that I had yet to learn, people I had to go out and meet and interact with. So I really immersed myself in learning the business, learning what it's like to run a business as a chief executive officer. I already knew how to build teams and train
Right.
teams. And, so I was very confident because I had that going into it. I already knew how to do that. And 7 years later, we've got the best team in the US, maybe even the world. But that process for me was a learning process. And then at some point in the learning, I said, okay, it's time to go find an investor. So I also hired a consultant who kind of private mentor coach, a private teacher, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
really helped me get my presentation ready for prime time, my business plan, my pro forma, again, profit and loss statement, etc. I made a list of 10 potential investors. I went to investor number one, who said no, investor number two, who said no, investor number three, who said, we're interested in this, but here's a whole list of questions that we have. And, half the questions they asked me, I didn't even understand the terminology that they were using. so,
Love that.
so I
Yeah.
thought I was ready. Yeah. So I thought I was ready for prime
Yeah.
time, and I wasn't. But I remember they asked me this one question about a line on the financial statement called EBITDA, earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and
Mm-hmm.
amortization. And they say sometimes it's called net operating income, but I didn't realize that you could refer to there were two ways to reference this particular line item, if you
Right.
will. So they asked me, they said, well, why don't you have EBITDA, EBITDA? Why don't you have EBITDA in your pro forma? And I was like, you're kidding. I thought I had that. Where? And I look in my mind, I'm going, what the hell is
Yeah.
EBITDA?
Yeah.
And I wrote it down, and then I went and looked it up. But so that was kind of the journey. And so they invited me to come back. They invited me to look these things up and come back, which I did. And we did that for a year, actually. It was, what about this? What about that? That lasted for a year. And that's one of the main points that I think our listeners should really understand is an undertaking of that size, or really an undertaking of any relevance. It takes time. And our first attempt, our second attempt, our third attempt, those are stepping stones to get to where you're trying to go. Don't quit out when the first attempt doesn't get you across the finish line. Don't quit when the second attempt doesn't get you across the finish line. You have to keep, every one of those things where you think, okay, I'm going to go present today and they're going to give me $1 million and I'm going to get this thing done. And then they say, we've got some questions. You just roll with that, run with that. And you'll get there. So it's this long view, right? We have to endure over the long haul. And I think ultimately that's one of the things that I presented as a skill set, as somebody who has patience, somebody who's focused, and somebody who can endure for the long haul.
I definitely want to get back to the coach here in a little bit and just kind of figure out what that person did, how you found them, everything. But I want to get a little bit into this going to investors right now. So in those first couple of no's, did you get any feedback from them about why they didn't want to invest?
The feedback I got at the time, what they said to me, the first one said, you don't want to do that. The debt service will be way too high. Now this is somebody who was already in the industry, so he knew the industry.
Okay.
And my assumption was he knew what he was talking about. But ultimately, I think he also saw this as a competitor to his operation, which is not in this area. But he said, you don't want to do this. The debt service is way too high, meaning, the return on it. Basically, what he was saying is it's just not worth it to do it.
Right.
And then the second person, who's a very successful retired U.S. Navy EOD tech, was focused on advancing education, and he wanted to step away from business for a little while and just kind of focus on himself. So, but it was that third one who is a very successful developer in the area, and that's a discussion unto itself. If you go to partner with somebody, find somebody who is already has strength in your geographic region, already well known, they already have a great reputation, and I will also say that not that they were looking to partner with a veteran. My partner is the Breeden company, Tory Breeden specifically, but not that they were looking specifically to partner with a veteran.
Uh-huh.
But when this opportunity came to them and they said, "Wow, here's a veteran that we can really kind of mentor and partner with and establish a good relationship with. And I mean, that was 10 years ago,
Right.
things are still going strong. It's a great relationship, and I'm greatly appreciative. And I got to get my motion right on. So
No worries. No worries.
come on, there
There it
you go.
is. There it is. No, I think that's a really a few kind of key points there about investors that I want to point out to everyone. So one, just because someone says no doesn't necessarily mean that like the business model itself is bad. It could just be the wrong time for them. It could be a potential competitor. It could just be, they're trying to shift their focus. They got too many plates spinning, whatever it is. A no does not mean that your idea is bad or that the business plan is bad. It could just mean that investor isn't the right fit right now. When you were looking at potential investors, I guess like what were some of the qualities you wanted to get? Because it's more than just a check. Money is cheap. You can get a check from anyone. So like, what else were you looking for?
Yeah, that's really this is a good discussion because initially I was looking for somebody who knew the industry. So I mean, indoor skydiving, right? 10 years ago, who knew what that
Right.
was? And even today, when I was pursuing this 10 years ago, there were about 13 or 14 operations in the US. Now there's 35 or 40 operations in the US. So much more people are familiar with what it is today as opposed to 10 or 12 years ago. But still, I'm presenting something that is relatively unknown, and that right there can be a showstopper for a lot of people. What? I've never heard of that. I remember when we were talking to some bankers. Um, I was invited to the bank. They had all their vice president and president and all their high level people sitting around the table, and these are mainly elder gentlemen, with gray or white hair or whatever. And I went through the briefing, just a brief overview, if you will, executive summary, and with a lot of pictures, right? Because this thing, you really need pictures to make people understand what this is. So, and at the end of the presentation, I asked everybody in the crowd, I said, now who would not try this at least once? And everybody said, oh, yeah, I would do it. Sure. Yeah. I would do it at least once. And then somebody raised his hand, one of the gentlemen at the end, and he said, okay, I'll be the stick in the mud. I wouldn't do it. I said, okay, would you pay for your children or your grandchildren to do it? And he said, you got me. so, even when that resistance is there,
Right.
you can work your way through that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the partner you ended up working with, it was a one, they wanted to do something with a veteran that kind of worked out well, but then also like they had the intimate knowledge of like the local business and landscape, and he's a developer. So I'm sure you probably needed some help building the facility because it's a big facility there too as well. So like having that connection was a good inroad to making that happen. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And partnering, in my case, partnering with a developer, somebody who would just be a round peg in a round hole, if you will, just to really simplify it. That was the quickest, easiest way to do it. So whatever our transitioning veterans are looking to do, a lot of it is technology these days and apps and cybersecurity. Whatever it is you're looking to do, if you're looking for investment, if you're looking for a partner, find somebody who's strong in the space, either geographically or just in the trade space, generally speaking, and align with them.
Yeah. So great advice there. I want to go back to, you said you had gotten a business coach at some point. Can you talk a bit about, one, what was the point you're like, okay, I think that I need a coach. And then how did you go about finding the right person for you?
So this was really just serendipity or accidental discovery, however we want to describe it. But when I went to that small business 101 that I described earlier, and I said at the end of that course, that's where my journey really began. A few people that were mentors or teachers in that course, they said, okay, you're now at this level, and here's a few names of some people that you should go talk to who can get you to the next level. And that was a continuous journey. One person can only take you so far, and then they say, now you're ready for this other person. And it even started with somebody before that. Early in this, I went to the Small Business Development Center, and they said ultimately you should talk to an accounting firm and get them to expose you to different resources. They said, as a matter of fact, somebody from Dixon Hughes Goodman, the accounting firm, they said this young man is going to be speaking at a daycare on Sunday morning to a group of daycare owners, and we recommend you go sit in on his presentation. So there I am on a Sunday morning at like 7 or 8 o'clock, sitting in, little teeny tiny daycare chairs at a little teeny tiny daycare table, listening to this CPA, this
Right.
accountant talk about things that I really wasn't familiar with at the
Right.
time. But when it was over, I went and introduced myself, and we had a great, just kind of 5-minute discussion. And he said, "Why don't you come down to the office and tell me about your project?" So we scheduled 45 minutes. I brought my 5 slides, 4 of them being pictures, down to his office, and we talked for 3 hours actually. And he's kind of the one who said, "I know this guy who's a coach consultant, and I recommend you have a discussion with him." And that kind of was the first, the first major stepping stone, if you will.
I think a consistent theme that I'm seeing throughout your story right now is there's not a direct path to any of this stuff, from making the plan to finding the coach to finding the investors and everything. And I'm just seeing like a persistence and determination to just, okay, I'm just gonna keep putting one foot in front of the other, and okay, I'm gonna go to this event, gonna talk to this person. And like if you just keep opening those doors, eventually like you find the right one, the right person in the right room that makes it worth it. But it's just like you got to keep looking through those doors and not being afraid to open them, and go sit in a tiny toddler's chair on 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning presentation, right? That's how it works sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it is persistence. The persistence is really what made it happen. And the other thing is, we've all heard this before, but people tell you there's no way that's going to happen. You can't do that. And truthfully, there were 4 or 5 other pretty significant efforts here in Virginia Beach to get this thing done. And I actually tracked all those people down and said, what went wrong? That was part of my research, is to find them and say, are you still doing this? If not, what went wrong? Why did you stop? Will you share any information with me? That was actually one of the key kind of deviations, if you will, or one of the steps along the way. Actually, when I went to that Small Business 101, that's what they said. They said, get out there and talk to people locally who are either doing it or did it in the past or tried to do it and didn't succeed. And then they said, talk to people nationally who are doing it.
And were people willing to be open and honest about what, for whatever reason, the project didn't work?
Most were, not everyone, but most people were. And, the other thing about it is my last assignment in the Navy was the air operations officer at an EOD training unit. So I was responsible for all the advanced diver training and all the advanced airborne training for about 1,200 East Coast EOD forces. And we would go to different parts of the country and lease, if you will, these facilities for training. At the end of the day, this is military freefall simulator training, right? Just like an F-18 pilot gets in a simulator. This is what military freefallers use as such an effective tool. You can't even begin to describe how effective it is. But when we were at these other places, we would see mom, dad, and the kids. We would see the birthday parties. We would see the 18-year-olds on a date. We saw the amusement value of this machine, if you will. We saw the recreation, people who are avid flyers, husband, wife, kids, youth league, whatever. But we saw the full model. And we would always come back to Virginia Beach and say, man, Virginia Beach would be a great place for this. We have all of that.
Right.
And it's heads and beds at the end of the day if the military decides to use it for training.
Right.
Yes. So that was all, that was all part of the research too, I guess, if you will. And there was a day where it dawned on me that this will happen in Virginia Beach. If I don't do it, somebody will. It's going to happen. And I was well positioned primarily because of my military experience to really get this thing done. So the final point there I want to make is I did heavily leverage my military experience.
Yeah.
And for all the listeners, you've got that. You have that to leverage. You just have to package it for your audience. If you want to get into cybersecurity, then package it appropriately. If you want to establish your own business, it could be cybersecurity, it could be automotive repair, it could be ACNR. I'll tell you what, if I was if I was retiring now and kind of searching for the next thing and I wasn't sure what it is,
Right.
I would look at owning a plumbing company or an AC&R company or an electrical company, those trade or a roofing company, landscaping. I mean, all of those trades, all of those services are in such high demand
Yeah.
that you will never go without work. And I'm going to fast forward here a second. I'm sorry, but a few years into iFLY, I realized that there's a need for really heavy hitting leadership training out there in the private
Right.
sector, the stuff we grew up with in the military. So I started this completely different operation called Elevate Your Leadership, and I use the flight chamber as a tool for that. So we face a challenge, and when we do that, we get outside of our comfort zone, and if things go well, our comfort zone expands. And so I have clients, right? And some of the clients that I have, in one case, a pair of brothers, high school dropouts, they own a multi-million-dollar landscaping company. They started when they were 18, just the two of them. Now they have 50 employees. And again, that's just the demand in service, product and service, I should say.
Yeah.
That's the demand and service that's out there.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple conversations. So I know we had someone from Perfect Technician Academy. So they kind of train people on HVAC systems. And he was just talking about how the demand for skilled labor right now is just so high. And I've had a couple of people on the show talk about these kind of like small, boring businesses that you drive by and you walk around all the time. And like, they're always there in the background, but they're not the kind of businesses that grab the headlines and get the giant valuations or something like that. But a lot of businesses like that do super well, and the owners do super well too. And it's just consistent revenue that it's almost like money printing machines, because it's just people just want it time and time and time again. Grass is always going to be growing,
They Yeah, that's exactly right. And I see it, there's a lot of the entrepreneurs organization and young professionals. There's so many of these organizations out there, and there are fairly young people who have really done well, for themselves at a young age because of good management. It's not that they're the ones in there turning the
right,
wrenches or,
right,
fixing or doing the AC repair. And again, that's where the military folks come in. We have those management skills. So, the company has 50 trucks that go out and do the repairs every day. Somebody has to be responsible or in charge of a division of that,
right,
or a platoon, if you
right.
will. There's going to be these 6 trucks are my region, and I'm in charge of this, and I'm going to schedule, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make sure the manpower's right. I'm going to make sure that everybody is trained appropriately, and I'm going to make sure everybody has the equipment to go out and do what they need to do to provide, a super high level of customer satisfaction.
I want to talk a little bit about the Chamber of Commerce, because it sounds like you've been very involved with the local Chamber of Commerce. So can you talk about one, just, what is a Chamber of Commerce and what role do they play in a community?
Sure. So a chamber of commerce, large or small, they exist almost in every municipality, and they are there to set conditions for businesses to thrive. They are there. So they have a legislative component. So they, for example, here in the Virginia, the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, we have a government affairs representative who spends a lot of time in Richmond. Minimum wage increase, right to work,
Right.
all these different laws that affect business owners. So the mission of the Chamber of Commerce is to unapologetically create conditions for businesses to thrive. That's kind of the overarching mission. Within that, you have committees, executive committee, DE&I committee, which I'm a member of this year, and other committees that have subtasks to, again, make sure that conditions are right for businesses to thrive. A lot of that involves business owners or representatives of businesses spending time with each other.
Right.
We get to know each other. We establish initiatives. Do we support a raise in minimum wage, or what do we think the minimum wage should be? So there's a lot of interaction with our elected representatives, from city council all the way up to the governor of the state and beyond. The Chamber of Commerce also provides a lot of business B2B, a lot of business to business interaction and selling opportunities, if you will. And then they also provide um, they provide a place for you to let the business community know what it is that you do. You know how I don't know why that keeps doing that. Oh, I didn't hit the button on the way in. So they also have an educational
Okay.
component. They have a mentorship program. They have a mentor protege program, and uh, again, conditions for businesses to thrive. They have the mentor protege. They have what's called Lead 757. I actually just had Lead 757 is a leadership development continuum that the chamber hosts every year. They look for about 35 or 40 people to participate. It's a year-long event where you visit different businesses and universities, and it's really I guess, an executive certificate, if you will, in leadership. But they provide those types of things. So, at part of the Lead 757, and because of my program called Elevate Your Leadership, I actually had 40 people at iFLY Virginia Beach yesterday, and I spoke to them
No,
about
super cool.
what I call the science of leadership, which is rest, hydration, nutrition, exercise, brain and heart health, and lifelong learning. I talk about the physiological aspect of being a leader. So I hope I kind of answered your question on a Chamber of
No, no, no.
Commerce there.
That was great. I wanted to ask that specifically because I think it can be easy to overlook the importance of using the Chamber of Commerce in being a small business owner and starting a small business. I think we hear, see signs say like, the Chamber of Commerce sponsors this road or does this event or whatever it is. And it's easy to just kind of see that in the background and not realize there can be a lot of value in working with your local Chamber of Commerce if you're trying to get a business off the ground, whether or not it's going to be like a local small business or even you're trying to do something bigger. There's absolutely value in working with those chambers of commerce.
It's significant. Now, if you're going to be a government contractor, that's almost like just still being in uniform, really. I mean, you're dealing with government entities, and you're working with a lot of retired people who came up the same pipeline you came
Right.
up. And so in the Chamber of Commerce, you don't see a lot of there are some, but you don't see a lot of government contracting organizations as members of the Chamber of Commerce, really because they rely on the government for their bread and butter. But everybody else in the business community, we rely on people who live in this community, or in the case of Virginia Beach tourism, people who visit this community. We have beach tourism, we have sports tourism, we have history tourism. There's all these different reasons people come here as tourists. So, and in my business, I'm a amusement, hospitality, recreational venue. So I need to tap into all of that. But here's the biggest thing about the Chamber of Commerce that, again, was accidental discovery for me. When I left active duty, I'm not wearing the uniform on a daily basis anymore. You're you're leaving your family. You're leaving what has been your
Yeah.
life for 20 years or more. And it's difficult. Everybody has trepidation. Everybody goes, man, what is it going to be like on the other side? And I went through that as well. The Chamber of Commerce has largely filled the void that was left behind, because now I see the same faces on a regular basis. We go golfing, we go to different events, maybe out of town. I went to this big thing in Denver a couple of weeks ago with the Chamber. I flew out to the USS George H.W. Bush 2 weeks
Oh,
ago
cool.
because I'm a member of the Chamber. Yeah. So for me, that business community, that affiliation with the business community through the Chamber of Commerce really filled a void that's left behind when you're just not on active duty anymore.
I think that's a great way to look at it. There's so much. I mean, there's the economic value of being able to find people that can help grow your business and find the education resources, and having someone that's like in your corner as a business owner. But then there's also the community aspect, and especially is starting something can an entrepreneurial journey can often be very lonely because you're doing it by yourself, and there's not a whole, especially in the very early stages when you don't have the money to pay for extra people or something. It can be a lonely endeavor. And so going through some type of community organization like that can give you that support system and working with other people who are, maybe where you were a couple of years ago and kind of help you navigate that. But then also just be there in friendly camaraderie and support of people who doing their own thing and making their own business. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, and again, once my journey started with that Small Business Development Center, which is a branch of the Chamber of Commerce, and they are there to take the energetic entrepreneur who has no experience. Part of their mission is to mentor that person along and get them to where it is they're trying to go.
Yeah, lots of great resources at your local Chamber of Commerce. If you have any type of idea that you want to spin around with someone, there's probably someone there you can talk to, sit down with your business plan, figure it out a little bit.
Exactly right. I would also add that within your municipality, they have most municipalities have an economic development
Yeah,
office of economic development, or so look for that as well. Oftentimes they'll have incentives, especially for veterans. They have financial incentives to help vets launch their business.
super cool. I want to spend last couple minutes on elevate your leadership. So like, when did the demand signal kind of come to you of, okay, I think there's a need for this, and then how did you think about, like, we're gonna fill this role? Like, what's that gonna look like?
Sure. So probably 4 years ago now, I was looking for leadership development for my management team. I have 35 employees. I have 6 people on the management team. Great people who want to do good and do better and get better. And we went to Franklin Covey and we went to Dale Carnegie, and I attended these courses with them, or other courses on my own, and I just could not find this "I've got your back" leadership development that we grew up with in the
Right.
military. And I felt the need to put something together for my team. So I did. I just kind of, went to my military background. I was a former Navy dive school instructor. I know how to develop curriculum. I've been through all the leadership training that at the time I thought, oh man, but in retrospect, that stuff was just solid gold. So I put something together based on largely on my military background and a little bit on my private sector experience. And I delivered it to my team, and it was very well received. It was so well received that they said, where has this been?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do this a long time
Yeah.
ago? And they said, well, except for this part, this part here, you kind of put us to sleep. So you might want to get rid of that. So I actually went through 2 or 3 iterations with the team to develop this thing to make it really valuable. And some people outside of my organization saw what I was doing, and they said, "You have something that is unique. Take that to market." And I was enjoying this.
Yeah.
Being in a leadership role, leading my company, having retired from a career in special operations. Leadership is in my DNA, if you will. I'm not saying I'm some great leader, but what I'm saying is that I'm in a position to help others and facilitate for others. So organizations can accomplish their objectives. And so it's fun. I enjoyed it. I incorporate the experience of the flight chamber. So when I fully developed it, the intent was we do an 8-hour day at iFLY Virginia Beach, and I take you through, I build a leader from the ground up. So we start out with what I call your cornerstone or your foundation.
Right.
So you develop a personal definition. If you can't develop a personal definition, then just use one that's already out there that you like. But if you don't have a real crystal clear definition of leadership in your mind, then you don't really know when you're leading,
Right.
or when you need to
Yeah.
lead, right? Or when you're not leading. It's like, oh man, I'm not leading right now and I need to. So we start out by building that definition. And then I put bricks around it with leadership styles and power types and critical traits of a leader, yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, this is stuff you pick. It's not me going, hey, you need to be one of these 7 things.
Right.
It's me going, hey, here's 7 things. If you Google it, you're going to find 57.
Right.
You find the ones that are going to be your brand, that are going to personalize your preferences and your level of energy and the way you like to do things. But we fly. And the flight experience, as I said earlier, is to break the ice with the group. It's to face a challenge, face a fear. For some people, it's both. It's a challenge and a fear. And they overcome it. They always do. And they smile and they love it. And they're highly energized afterwards. So the comfort zone expands. So I designed it as this 8-hour event at iFLY Virginia Beach. I probably did 10 or 12 iterations of that. And then COVID hit. So, so I had to pivot. I basically had to go to a webinar
Right.
format. So, and actually, my next one starts next week, November. I'm giving our dates away here, but November 15 to 18. So it's an 8-hour event. It's 2 hours a day times 4
Yeah.
days. November 15 to 18, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern time. So now I have the webinar and I have the in-house event. Now that COVID is going away, I just did an event last week with YPO, super event, 11 people, and just a great event overall. So that's Elevate Your Leadership. I've got the 1-day event where we build the leader. I've got the 2-day event where day 1 we build the leader. Day 2 we show the leader how you build a high performing
Yeah.
team.
Love that. What I really loved about this, and this has come up multiple times, is just scratching your own itch. It wasn't, some type of in-depth market analysis or something. It was, okay, I have a problem that I'm trying to solve as a business leader. Well, okay, let me just make something to try and address this problem. And then you got feedback, instantly from your employees, your users of, oh, this is useful. This is good. We should do this for more people. And it doesn't always have to be this, super deliberate process. I'm always a fan of the idea of, if you're scratching your own itch, then you automatically have a customer base of at least one. And I hate to break it to you all, but like, we're not all so unique that your problem, no one else has that. If you have that problem and you can find a good solution for it, I almost guarantee you that solution probably works for at least a couple other people at the absolute
For
minimum.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Bob, this has been a fantastic talk. We're kind of getting down to the last few minutes here. So in a minute, I'm going to pass it back over to you. Just provide any, last thoughts, words of wisdom to the crowd. Before we do those, question I always ask my guests: you think back to your time in the Navy, what was the best and or worst chow hall you ever eat at?
Well, I have to say the best was probably Balad, Iraq.
Uh huh.
I was with the Siege of Sodif there. That was probably the best. I mean, you could get tacos, you could get pizza, you could get ice cream, you could get crab legs, every day.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So yeah, so that was probably the best. The worst, man, there's a lot to pick from there. So um, I'm going to say the worst was the brief time I spent on board a ship, the USS Preserver, and so the galley, the mess
Yeah,
hall, if you
yeah,
will, and that boils down to the personnel that run it.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a
everything about that ship was just torture for me, though.
Well,
So
I will say I appreciate. Unfortunately, the Air Force overwhelmingly wins the best chow hall, so I'm glad to see we didn't get an Air Force one. And I think it's actually the first Navy galley we've had is the worst. So good diversity of options here for people. Love it. Well, Bob, thank you so much for giving up some time this morning and coming in on and talking to the audience. Just want to pass it back over to you. Just provide any last thoughts you want to put upon our crowd as they're trying to think about what they want to do in their post military life.
sure. Well, I'll say two things. One is I love to pay it forward. I love to help people. So if you want to contact me and just have a discussion, Zoom, come to iFLY. And if you want to come to iFLY and have a talk about how you can transition, I'd love to have the discussion with you. I'll have you fly as my guest. And so reach out to me, through whatever medium. Those mediums could be, the best one is just go to robertpizzini.com. That's Robert, Pizzini.com. Once again, robertpizzini.com. And you can learn about Elevate Your Leadership and what I'm doing there, but there's a contact there as well. If you're writing things down right now, well, I guess if you're listening to this, you can rewind it. So my phone number is 757 333 4940. Once again, 757 333 4940. And then my email, bob at iflyvabeach.com. Bob at ifly Victor Alpha Beach.com. I'm happy to talk to anybody. Love to see veterans transition and be successful. And if you just want to have coffee or a beer, I'd love to do that too.
Perfect. Well, one, greatly thank you for like putting out your number and your email and everything. Love that. I just love that, like the direct and openness there. So greatly appreciate that, and it shows a lot about your willingness to want to help other veterans. So I appreciate that. So Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great conversation. I know I've learned a ton, a lot of good stuff in here for anyone out there who's trying to think about, their post-military life. So thanks for coming on and enjoy your weekend. All right.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks a lot for having me.